I believe we're up to paragraph 10 in the first chapter of this part 2 in Likutey. In these books, it's page 50. However, in order to get a running start, in order to get into it a little, I'd like to review a little bit what was said in paragraphs 8 and 9, and it'll make it clear. We'll do it outside. I won't necessarily read it inside, so that you get very much familiar with where he's coming from. In paragraph 8, Rabbi Nachman spoke about the fact that prayer is one of the highest spiritual connections to Hashem, and unfortunately, people take it very lightly, to the extent where he said most people who don't have the right appreciation for how special it is, when they're praying, they're looking to get it over with as quickly as they possibly can. Sometimes people look for a prayer session, choosing a place to pray. They want to know, where am I going to get out more quickly? It's actually that poor because they don't know how holy this really is. And now Rabbi Nachman mentioned previously that one of the things that really helps elevate the prayer is prophecy. Prophecy then means a very close, high-level connection with Hashem, where a person is connecting to the divine spirit of Hashem. Now we'll see in other places in Likutey where he says, one example, when we're praying, it's me talking to Hashem. When I'm studying Torah, it's Hashem speaking to me. So actually, the study of Torah is a form of prophecy. We know that when Hashem originally gave the Torah on Mount Sinai, we're told that he spoke to all the Jews face to face. Just like when Hashem engages a prophet and gives him information, divine information, that's called prophecy. So too, the Torah, the wisdom of Hashem, is considered also a form of prophecy. And he says that it's through prophecy that we redeem the prayer. We take the prayer out of darkness, out of a place of weakness in a sense. And he shows this based on different sentences in the Torah. We know that there was a story earlier in the Torah where one of the kings took the wife of Avram Avinu. He didn't know it was his wife, he thought it was his sister, and he was afflicted with illness. And he came to Hashem and said, I didn't know. Hashem said, oh, okay, you didn't know. Approach Avraham, ask him he's a prophet, and he will pray for you. So Hashem made it perfectly clear that the fact that he has prophecy, that's something that'll add power to the prayer. This was in paragraph 8. Then in paragraph 9, Rabbi Nachman went on to say that when the prayer is redeemed, when it's taken out of darkness, when it's in its proper place, then the whole medical field, the whole need for the medical field is eliminated. And he goes on to explain that in those days, especially 200 years ago, and it even applies to today, it's just that today, because of technology, we're so removed from it, we forget. The majority of medicines that are being used today, there's a lot of things that are synthetic, that are created in laboratories, but original medicine and healing is all based on herbs, flowers, vegetation, things like that. And Rabbi Nachman explains, the Torah teaches us that all of the vegetation in this world, all of the flowers, plants, herbs, things like that, the Torah tells us that they have a star in the sky, and an angel appointed over them that infuses them with the spiritual power for them, the healing power that they possess. Where do these stars and where do these angels get it from? They get their power from the word of Hashem. There's a pasuk in the Torah, Bidvar Hashem Shamayim Nasu. It's through the word of Hashem that heaven was created. Uberuach piv kol tzavam. And with the breath of Hashem, what created all the hosts of angels. So that now we're moving up the ladder. We're going down on earth in physical form. Healing medicines are made from herbs and plants and things like that. Spiritually, those herbs and plants are receiving their energy, their healing power from the stars and the angels. those stars and angels are receiving it from the word of Hashem. Rabbi Nachman explains and shows through what you learned in the previous lesson, that when a person prays properly, when a person really puts their heart and mind into their prayer is an expression of the word of Hashem. It's Hashem that's putting the words into the person's mouth and giving them the ability to express the prayer properly. So that's also an example of Dvar Hashem, the word of Hashem. So here again, when a person is praying properly, they're bypassing all the intermediaries. They're going to the source from where the healing originates and tapping into there. So, and there in the source, down here on earth, every single illness and every single type of illness requires a different medication. And sometimes the doctor will try a certain medicine. They'll see the person will say they're vomiting, it's causing it. Okay, let's try a different antibiotic. It's similar, but it doesn't have this one item. Maybe it won't affect you in the negative way that this is. But that's all down here on earth. There's all of this differentiation. When you move up to the source, up there in the source, it's all one. It's all emanating from Hashem Echad, from one Hashem. That spirituality, when it comes down to earth, differentiates and it splits up into all kinds of different things. When you're tapping into the source, it's all going to that one Hashem. And therefore, Rabbi Nachman says, when a person is able to do that, then they don't need to search for medicines, which medicine, which herb is the one that applies to this one. Hashem says, Va'avadatem es Hashem Elokechem, you will serve Hashem, uveirach eslach mecha v'esmeimecha, he will bless your bread and water and remove v'hasirosi machlem mikribecha, and remove all illness from you. Now the term to serve Hashem in Hebrew, that's called avodah, la'avodat Hashem. Prayer is called avodah. It's called avodah shebalev, service of the heart, a work of the heart. All of this, he's quoting sources in the Talmud and the written Torah that use this terminology. So he says here again, when a person is praying properly, they will need to come on to the herbs and the medications and the doctors, all of that. They're tapping into the source from which all of those herbs and medicines draw their power, and then the healing can come about through that combination of the prophecy and the prayer, the divine word of Hashem and the prayer. The healing can come about, can be put into bread and water, meaning the most simple, common things that a normal person has in their daily food can have that same healing power as the medicine. Because what's giving the medicine its healing power is that Devar Hashem that's been passed down through the angels and stars into those herbs. You are getting it from the same source, that kind of thing. Now let's pick up, please, from paragraph 10, where you're up to. And now he's going to give us three extremely important requirements that will help your prayer be effective. He's going to explain 3 issues which definitely weaken a person's prayer. And by correcting these 3 things, this will empower your prayer to be as effective as it could be. Ach yesh shalosh avodos, we said before that prayer is called avodah. Avodah. There's a pasuk we recite it in the Shema, where it says that Hashem asks us la'avdo b'chol levavchem, to do avodah, to serve Him wholeheartedly, with our whole heart. And the rabbis say, which service, which mitzvah is it that's done with the whole heart? Prayer. Proper prayer is where you put your whole heart into the words that you're saying. This is one of the reasons why Rabbi Nachman put emphasis. We know that there are prayers the 3 prayers, the morning prayer, the afternoon and evening, which are done in Hebrew. We have a siddur, those that can pray in Hebrew. And Rabbi Nachman said, those prayers are important and necessary. However, there's a higher form of prayer in addition to those, which is when a person is praying in your own language, English, French, whatever it is. And he said, one of the reasons is because when you're praying in a foreign language, it's much more difficult to put your heart into it Many people don't understand Hebrew at all, or if they understand it 30%, 60%, much harder to put your heart into those words than when you're praying in your language, the language that's most familiar to you. You can express yourself most clearly and put your heart into it. And those are some of the most important things in effective prayer. So he says, so prayer is called avodah, and now he's going to show us there are 3 negative things in Torah that are called avodah. And these 3 negative things can harm your prayer. Shehem mafsidin avodot hatfilah. These 3 negative avodot can detract, take away from your prayer, the effectiveness of your prayer. Vehem sholosh midos. And these are 3 types of behavior. Hainu, number 1, al tehivoz l'chol adam. This is a quote from Pirkei Avot. Do not insult anyone. Don't insult anyone. Don't regard any human being with contempt. Shelo levazot shum adam. Not to insult or disparage any human being. That's one serious threat that'll detract from the effectiveness of your prayer. Number 2, avodah zarah, idol worship. Today we don't in most places we don't have idol worship. There are some places in India where there's actual what the Torah defines as idol worship. But he says, va'afilu kilkul ho'emuna, even any deficiency in a person's faith in Hashem, faith in the Torah, if a person believes in Hashem 95%, that means 5% is in some other direction. They're misplacing some of their faith. They're putting their faith in something other than Hashem. In the Kriya Shema that we recite every day, it says there, Visartem, you'll turn away from Hashem, Va'avadetem Elokim acherim, and you'll worship idols. One of the great rabbis, the Baal Shem Tov, said, any degree of turning away from Hashem is turning towards idol worship. So again, we're looking to try to really have complete faith that I'm betting only on Hashem, nothing else. I don't really believe in anything else being as good as Hashem, as being in a position to know what I need and to be able to fulfill that need. She'ein ha'emunah b'shleimus, where the faith is not complete. Hu gam kein b'chinas avodah zarah. That's also tantamount to idol worship. So now, which person today can say they have 100% faith? You're right. We're struggling, and this is one of the reasons why our prayers aren't necessarily 100% effective. And when we talk about going to a tzaddik, the Gemara says when a person has a real critical need, the advice is to pray for yourself, but in addition, to find someone who can pray on your behalf also. Why? What the answer is, because I'm looking for someone whose faith and loyalty and devotion to Hashem is superior to my own, and therefore he has a better chance than I do in assuring that the prayer will be received and effective.
It says only perfection in the world is Hashem.
Yes.
We're not perfect. So, but it's almost saying that we should become perfect.
We should strive for perfection. Hashem knows that we can't get there, but every day we're trying to improve. And every little step that we improve, Hashem respects that and loves that, and it makes us beloved to him. That effort, striving there, knowing that that's not when we can't get to that. Hashem loves that. That's the second item. The second item that can harm a person's prayer is any deficiency in faith. Number 3, shmiras habris. Hainu min she'eno shomer habris koroi. A person who does not maintain proper moral purity. The relationship between men and women being conducted properly according to the guidance of the Torah, according to the way Hashem defines. is considered a good, healthy, kosher relationship between men and women. And now Rabbi Nachman says, Ki kol shalosh midos elu hein bechinas avodos de sitra achra. Because these three things that we just listed here, they are avoda of the other side. We said prayer is called holy avoda, and there's avoda of the other side, which is these three things we listed here: insulting another human being, lack of faith, and lack of moral purity. These are avodas of the sitra achra, umafsidin avodas hatfila, and they weaken and detract from the effectiveness, from a person's ability to pray effectively. And now he's going to prove this. He's going to show in the Torah, sources in the Torah, that these three things are called avoda also. Bizui anoshim, insulting people, hu bechinas avoda. That's referred to in the Torah as avoda, kemoshamotzinu ba'achei Yosef, as we find in the story of the brothers of Yosef. Al shebizu oisoi, they insulted him when he told them about the dreams that he had and the future that was. They mocked him, they laughed at him. You're a liar. You're fantasizing. It's nothing. V'lo haminu shehu yeh melech. They refused to believe that he would be the leader, the king among them. Ali deizeh naflu lebechinas avdus. And the Torah says what resulted from that? They became slaves, of servants, avo eved. Va'amru, they ended up, at the end of the story, the brothers come to him and they say, Hinenui lefanecha lavodim. We are prepared to be your servants. Avodim, avodah. This is an avodah of the other side. Next, avodah zara, idol worship, or lack of faith. Kamo shekasuv, the first one of the 10 commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzasicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am your Hashem. I am your only God who took you out of Egypt, mi beis avodim, the place of slavery, the house of slavery. Ki eretz Mitzrayim melea gilulim avodah zara. Because the Torah tells us that at that time, Egypt was a center for idol worship, all kinds of idol worship. The Alkain Nikroim Beis Avodim, therefore it's referred to here as a house of slaves. Avoda, again, that negative avoda. Bechinas avdus hanal, that wrong type, that negative avoda. The third item, Shmira Sabris, moral purity. Mishe Pogembo, a person who goes against the guidance of Hashem in this area, who Gamkein Bechinas Avdus, is also in this category of the wrong type of avoda. B'bechinas Cham, as the Torah tells us about Cham, the son, one of the children of Noah. Shenem Arbo, the Torah says, Oror Kenan, Eved Avodem Yelechov. Kenan was a descendant of Cham. The Torah tells us that there was a flood that took place, and Hashem chose to save Noah and his family. They were told to build an ark. They went into the ark and they were protected. Now, while they were told that during that time that they're in the ark, because the world is in a state of destruction, there should be no relations between husband and wife. The Torah mentions this, that when there's major suffering going on in the world, a person is supposed to show that they acknowledge that, they recognize that. And one of the ways that they show that is by not engaging in marital relations. And the Torah tells us that Cham violated this. Cham, the son, one of the sons of Noah, refused to comply with the instructions of Hashem. He went against this. So this was considered to be a lack of morality. Hashem defined morality during that time as a separation between husband and wife. The result was that Hashem cursed the descendant, the child of Cham, and said he will be a slave to his brothers. Eved, Avoda, or Eved Avodim Yelechov. So Rabbi Nachman showed us in the sources in the Torah that there's prayer, which is called Avodah, and there's opposing forces. There's three negative things, wrong things that a person can do, which are also Avodah, and these Avodot detract from that Avodah. It's this or this. V'tzorich lotzeis mishalosh avodos elu. A person has to try to remove themselves from these three negative avodot, dahainu mishalosh midos hanal, from those three services, v'oz zochin lavodat hatfila. And then the person will achieve successful prayer. V'oz yecholim lehisrafos b'chol davar shebolam. Then that person will be able to be healed from anything, afilu belechem umayim, even bread and water. Because again, their prayer will be the right kind of prayer which reaches up to that place from where the energy, the healing energy originates from. And then that energy can be drawn, you don't need a particular medicine. That energy can be drawn down into your most basic food items, such as bread and water. That now Rabbi Nachman says, let me show you how what I've just taught you appears in hinted form in a Mishnah in the Talmud. There's a Mishnah in Psachim that says, Bakol misrapin. A Jew is allowed to use anything to cure themselves, to heal themselves when a person is ill, chutz, except for three things we're going to see in a moment. Bakol misrapin. Anything can cure you. Hainu b'chol davar shebolam yecholam lisrapos. What this Mishnah is also telling us, it's going to show us an example of a person who can be healed through anything. They're not limited to a specific medicine or something like that to get their healing. Ubitnai, on condition, the Mishnah says there, except there are three things you're not allowed to use to heal yourself. Chutz mi'avodah zarah, you're not allowed to use idol worship or anything that was used in idol worship. Let's say incense or something like that was used as part of idol worship. You cannot use that to heal yourself. V'gilui arayos, and also anything that's involved in illicit relationships between men and women. Ushfichas damin, and bloodshed, murder. These three things cannot be used. A person's allowed to be healed through anything except these three things. Now Rabbi Nachman is going to show how these three correspond perfectly to the three things we mentioned earlier. Dahainu sholosh midas hanal. What this Mishnah is actually giving us is examples of the three things we spoke about before. Shehem sholosh avodas, which are the three negative avodas. Hainu kisheyoytze misholosh midas elu. When a person gets themselves out of those three wrong things, azai bakoel misrapim, then that person will be able to be healed through anything. Afilu belechem umayim, even through bread and water. Because when a person is not involved in those three wrong avodos, and then that person achieves the avodah called prayer, then that person can be healed through anything. Now here again, the three things listed here were idol worship, we spoke about that before. The Mishnah uses the wording Gilui Arayos, which is another term for Pegam Habris. Gilui Arayos means illicit relations, which is another version of Pegam Habris. And the third thing was Shfichas Damin, murder. When a person insults or embarrasses another human being, that's called spilling their blood. Because what happens when a person is embarrassed, they turn red, then they turn white. And the Gemara says in several places that insulting or embarrassing a person is like murder. Murder is called spilling a person's blood, shfichus damim in Hebrew, and insulting and embarrassing a person is also spilling blood. So he just showed us through two different ways. He showed us that number one, prayer is called avoda, and these three things are called avoda. This is positive avoda. These are negative avodas, which cancel this one out. It weakens this. And then he showed us an actual Mishnah in the Talmud, which speaks about healing. And it says you're allowed to use anything to heal you except these three things. But those words you're allowed to use could also be translated as you can be healed through everything. When? If you don't fall into any of these three things.
My question was, how could you be healed from murder? Like if you committed murder, how's that healing you on this?
He's not, on the contrary, he's saying not if you committed murder, by avoiding murder, by avoiding insulting or embarrassing a person, that will add strength and power to your prayer. You follow?
You said you can't be healed.
You can be, no. You can be healed through anything, through bread and water, by avoiding these three things, by avoiding idol worship, by avoiding murder, by avoiding illicit relations.
Is that being Lashon Hara? Is it the same thing as Lashon Hara?
Lashon Hara is something terrible. It's something terrible.
It's gossip, but it's not murder.
Yeah, it's exactly. The spilling blood here refers more direct. Could be Lashon Hara is not, I'm sorry. There's a place in the Talmud where it says that Lashon Hara is like all three of these things combined. However, here he's listing them separately. He's listing spilling blood, which means insulting, causing shame and embarrassment to another person.
Probably. So in other words, privately.
It's not the same, although again, the Torah in describing Lashon Hara says, you should know that it's as bad as all three of these things combined. There's a lot written about that. I'll share one beautiful thing I once saw. According to Hebrew law, in a court of law, if one witness comes to testify against a person, it's not considered enough to punish the person. It requires a minimum of 2 witnesses that saw the person commit the crime. There are some very rare exceptions, but that's the standard, that's the norm. So when a person commits a sin down here on earth, and the prosecuting angel up in heaven comes before Hashem and says, Hashem, I'm here to testify. This person committed this sin. Hashem says, you're right. Okay, I heard. No, punish him. Sorry, you can't punish him. You're one witness. Now, when a Jew down here on earth tells their friend, did you see what he did? Or let me tell you what this person did. They become the second witness. They become a partner to that prosecuting angel. And that's what causes the person to actually be punished. And that's terrible. It's terrible. That one of the last things that a Jew wants is to be the cause of another Jew being punished.
Worse to hear Lashon Hara than to actually say it.
Also, because they say what's guilty, the whole is guilty, not the mouse. When a mouse gets in, and the one that made the whole is the real guilty party. So people that are willing to listen to gossip in some ways are worse than the person gossiping, because they're the ones that create an opening for that kind of thing, which is sad. Let's continue. Rabbi Nachman now in the next paragraph, this chapter on Likutey is extraordinary in that he's really going to go into detail in explaining how healing works, and he's going to make it perfectly clear to us how we can participate in this most effectively. Paragraph 11, Yud Aleph, V'da, you should know, sheyesh chiluk bein hacholas. There are differences between illnesses. Ki yesh cholas shu b'chinas tzomeach. There's a sickness, a type of sickness that grows. It develops. Doesn't come in one shot. A person cuts their finger and bleeds, and germs get in, and it's a pretty quick process sometimes of an infection taking place. Of that, if it's not treated properly, if it's not covered from dirt, if it's not, you don't put iodine. But there are certain illnesses that have a whole, like when a woman becomes pregnant, and in order for the child to produce, there's 9 months of development. There are some sicknesses, he's going to show us, that take 9 months or 9 years to develop. Just like when a person plants a seed in the earth, in order for that to evolve into a tree, that seed has to fall apart. It has to rot in the ground. It falls apart. There There are liquids that ooze out of that seed. If you study agriculture, you'll know that he's defining exactly how this works. V'nasin gidin, and those liquids develop into little like capillaries and veins and arteries. V'nitois v'n'elu alelu, and then it expands. It gets more and more. Ad shenasa shorish, until it turns into a root. You look at roots of a plant, and you see all of those little wires that it came from a seed. A person's put a seed in the ground, and if you could watch what's taking place, or you speak to people that study this well, they'll tell you this is exactly how it works. Umimenu yoitze kemoyanofim, and from there come out like branches. Ume'elu anofim oidanov machem, and those branches branch out further, have a root spread, and until this develops into a tree with branches and everything, and then fruit on the tree. So too there are illnesses, lo aleinu, it shouldn't happen to us, that develop over a period of many years. There are illnesses that are inside of a person from birth, from when the person was born, that were passed down genetically through the parents. Illnesses that are transferred, that actually come into the person from birth. And in sometimes these illnesses will not show themselves until the person's 60 years old, 70 years old. And doctors who study medicine really well properly will be able to tell you, they'll be able to show you examples and cases, how this illness actually was there 60 years ago. But I didn't feel, you're right. The nature of this illness is, for the first 30 years, you don't feel, you don't see. It first starts really showing itself after that length of period of time. And while this illness is developing, the illness is invisible. No human being can recognize it. The person doesn't feel it in any way. And if they're taking certain tests, that are standard tests that a doctor does, person gets a clear bill of health. And then 3 years later, they go into the doctor's office, and the doctor sees something wrong, and he says, "Doctor, is this something that just happened?" No. Then why? I took tests. You're right. The nature of this illness is it doesn't show up. Our tests cannot recognize it until it's reached a certain stage of development. And no human being is aware of that illness at that point. It's just that there are symptoms that develop in the person. A person starts feeling extra itchy, or their vision starts being blurred. There's different symptoms that develop. While that illness is developing, which are signs, indications of an illness developing. Here again, a person experiences some change going on in their body. They go to a doctor, and the doctor says, tell me exactly what you're feeling. Tell me, is this only by day, by night? Is it only when you're walking or not? And a person who's knowledgeable enough, hearing the symptoms that you're describing, the doctor, based on what they studied, will say, I've learned about this, and it's very possible that this is diabetes. What are you, nuts, doctor? Sugar is going to have something to do with my toes. Come on, give it a break. I eat a chocolate bar, that's going to cause my toe to have to be empty. Yes, that's how it works. The nature of this illness is, and again, there are certain symptoms which will identify a heart problem, and certain things will identify a sugar, all kinds of different things. A growth, chas v'sham, all lo aleinu, this should never happen to any of us or any of our family or friends. So that's regarding how the illnesses develop. Now let's study how the medicines work. And so too, when people are being healed through herbs or medicines, yesh gam chilukim, there are all kinds of differences. Yet sheyesh cholas sheyuchal lisrapois ayidei esav echad. There are illnesses that can be cured through one herb, one item. Doctor takes tests, you're missing B12. We're going to correct this. You're going to start eating foods that have B12. You're going to see the symptoms are going to disappear because that's what's causing this particular weakness. Vitamin C. Take vitamin C. This is going to change. Yes, I'll show you. Take this in this dose for this length of time. You're going to see this change.
If you have, let's say you have one person who's speaking Lashon Hara, he's taking B12, another guy who's not. But he keeps continuing to say, speak Lashon Hara. That vitamin may not help him anyway.
Correct.
So it's ultimately
correct.
everything.
Now, if this were as obvious as you're saying it, there'd be no free choice. If a person would see that as soon as they say Lashon Hara, the medicine stops being effective or they get sick, then there'd be no test really in the world anymore. Unfortunately, in order that we should have reward and punishment, and in order for there, yes, to be free choice, it's not always, Hashem doesn't always show it so clearly. So you'll have people who are speaking Lashon Hara and everything, and they appear to be in perfect health. But unfortunately, sometimes they're being punished in other ways, or sometimes Hashem is waiting for the next world, Chas v'sholom, the world of eternity. Instead of punishing the person down here, where it's 10, 15 years, Chas v'sholom, the punishment can be in a place where it's an eternal suffering, Chas v'sholom.
He's a merciful God, right? He's merciful.
Yes. He definitely prefers not to punish. He's forgiving. Definitely. He wants us to win. He wants us to succeed. No question about it.
I wasn't brought up, with a yeshiva background or any of this information. I almost feel like it's almost not fair because for somebody that hasn't had the education, the understanding, yet he's getting punished for something he doesn't even understand it's bad.
Question. I'm from Israel. I come to Florida, and in Israel, where I live, there's no such thing as streetlights. There's no such thing. The neighborhood that I'm in, there's no such thing. I come into Florida and I rent a car and I get in there and I start driving and the light is red and it's green and I'm going along my merry way and a cop stops me and says, "What are you doing? Are you nuts? You're crazy? You just went through a stop sign. There's red light, but there's no stop sign. Didn't you see the stop sign? What's a stop sign? You see that red thing there that says stop on it? What is stop? I don't speak English. I only read Yiddish. I only know Yiddish." He says, "I'm going to give you a $50 ticket or a $500 ticket, and you're going to go learn English before you get into a car." Meaning that on one hand, there is a concept that if a person was brought up without an opportunity to study, they're called tinok shenishba, like a child who was taken into captivity by non-Jews at a young age and never was brought up by Jews, so they didn't know. That Hashem definitely responds with kindness. Hashem is, but if a person has the opportunity to study, they have the opportunity to learn, and there's negligence involved, or laziness involved, or arrogance involved, then it could be a problem. Today, we're living in a world where, fortunately, the Torah is available more than ever before. It's accessible in video, in audio, in English, French, Spanish, every language. There are books coming out every second, new books being produced all over the world. And if a person is aware of it, we need to try as best as we can to educate ourselves, to educate our children, and to inform any people around us that are willing to listen, to make them aware that this knowledge is available, the information is available. Try it, see if it's going to improve your life. So now we said, "V'chein b'refuas hasabim," so too regarding healing. There are certain illnesses that can be cured by one particular herb, one particular vitamin, for example. V'yesh cholas godol mizeh, Sometimes you have a more serious illness, which requires combining several herbs, combining several medications. To mix together several different herbs in order to prepare the medicine that's going to heal this illness. And some illnesses require medicines that come from distant places. It's not available in Florida. It's only available in Hawaii. Certain fruits, we know certain things that are only available in a different country. It's got to be brought from a different country. There are times people from Israel that get on a person has a certain type of illness and they tell them hospitals here cannot treat it. You have to go to Cleveland. You have to go to a special hospital which is set up to treat. They have the medicines for this type of illness. And there are illnesses, unfortunately, for which no medication helps. Because the illness is more powerful than the medicine. However, as the illness is first developing, when it's in its earliest stages, before it really came into effect and revealed, it's much easier to heal it, to cure it at that time if you catch it in its earliest stages, before it really developed. However, unfortunately, at that time, the sick person isn't aware of it, and it's not showing up on the medical tests. Person's taking their annual checkup, and it's not showing up. And the only one who's aware of that illness developing in the person is Hashem. So therefore, the person doesn't even know that they need medicine. So they're not going to go to a pharmacy. They're not even going to go to a doctor. They don't feel any pain yet, even though this growth is starting to develop inside of them. But if the person is following the advice we said before, if the person is praying properly, the word of Hashem, which is prayer, so that this person doesn't have to go to a pharmacy. They go to a bakery every month to buy bread, regular bread. That person can receive their healing power through bread and water. And as we said before, the person can be cured through everything. They can receive healing from everything. Then that person could be receiving the cure even when that illness is in its earliest development state. Since he doesn't need medicine. His regular diet, his most basic diet, his bread and water is receiving that energy from the prayer, from the Dvar Hashem, the healing power from there. Therefore, even in the earliest stages of that illness, where the illness is not yet visible, it doesn't show up on any tests, you don't feel any of the symptoms yet, that person could be receiving the cure in the bread and water that they're eating and drinking of their standard diet.
Even if they don't know they're
Exactly. Just like if a person were taking medicine, if let's say a person doesn't know they have an illness, the wife sees that her husband is catching colds all the time. And the wife knows that this husband will not take a vitamin, and when he's not looking, she puts some vitamin C into his orange juice. He drinks orange juice. Orange juice has 0.01, a glass of orange juice has 1 gram of, whatever it is of vitamin C. She puts in a half a teaspoon of concentrate vitamin C that has 1,000 times that amount. He doesn't know he's drinking, and suddenly his body is getting stronger. And same thing here. The person whose prayer is in a real good place, It's not vitamin C. It's bread and water, anything. And this is what the Torah means when Hashem says, Kol hamachalo asher samti b'Mitzrayim. All of the illnesses, the diseases that I've given to the Egyptians, lo yosim olecha, I will not place upon you, ki ani Hashem roifecha, because I am Hashem, your healer. The Hikshu Kol HaMefarshim, and all the commentaries mention that there's something that doesn't make sense here. Im lo yosim, if he's not going to give us the illness, ma tzorech l'refuah, then why do I need him to heal? Why is he saying, because I'm your doctor? If I'm not sick, I don't need a doctor. You understand the question? But based on what we've been learning here, meyushav heitek, it makes perfect sense. Pirush, because what the pasuk is telling us is, Kol hamachlo lo yosem olecha. All illness I will not place on you. Meaning, I won't allow you to get to a stage of being sick. Because I will heal you earlier, way earlier. When that illness is first starting to develop, it doesn't show up on any test yet, I'll heal you then. Because I, Hashem, am your healer, meaning I'm different than all the doctors. Your doctors will only know about it at a certain stage. I know it before everybody. I know it before you know about it. I know it before they know about it. Ani Hashem daika. It's me, Hashem. Hainu be'es smicha samachla. At the time when that illness is first starting to develop. She'oz einei yedimimenu rak ani Hashem. Then no one knows about it. Only me, Hashem. Oz harape eschod. I'll be curing, I'll be healing you then already. How? Al yidei bechinas dvar Hashem. Through your prayer. Through the dvar Hashem, the tefillah. V'lo yovoi lidei machlo klal. So that it won't develop into a full-blown sickness. You'll never get there. You'll be healed earlier at the earliest stages of its development. Clear? Please.
Does that mean that basically that healing had to happen while you were still praying? Like every day, like I pray for Rabbi or whatever, or I pray that please God keep me healthy. Mm-hmm. Because I was doing that and then I was staying away from the three bad things, God was taking care of that. Is that what it's trying to, like, would that be the practical?
Exactly. So
a person should be, I mean, we pray for our health anyways 3 times in Ch1-class, but that in specifically, this means I need to be thinking about this on a constant. But thank you, God, for not thinking, but how would you?
The more conscious a person is of what, the more a person studies this and is aware of it and conscious of it, it helps the effectiveness. But even if not, if a person's following the program that he says here, a person has an opportunity to insult someone and saying, I won't do it because I'm a Jew. And Jews don't do that. We don't insult other people. I have an opportunity, I have an opportunity, I'm being tested whether I believe that the pandemic is a physical thing or it's something from Hashem. Everything is from Hashem. Or I just closed a deal and I made $100,000 and I say, I did it. I was so. Or I say, thank you, Hashem. I know that I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so. All of these, the 3 items he's pointing out, it's the combination of that plus the combination of prayer. And it doesn't have to be prayer for healing. Any good, sincere prayer that a person's doing. You understand? It's not even only when you're praying for healing. Any prayer. When you're praying, thanking Hashem, when you're praying for parnasah, all the prayers have this power, that it's Dvar Hashem, it's the word of Hashem. You're going to the source from where the angels get it, from where the stars get it.
Well, thanking Hashem that you're healthy on a daily would be.
Of course.
Right, I'm saying just to be practical.
Of course. But I'm saying, even if it weren't that, all the prayer, reciting Tehillim, is all examples of holy prayer. Now he's going to give us another pasuk in the Torah, which brings all the different things we spoke about together. He's going to show us a source in the Chumash where there's a sentence that includes everything we've been speaking about here. And this is what the Torah tells us. Vayomer, and he said, Im shamoa tishma, if you will listen to the word of Hashem, v'hayoshor be'enov taseh, and you will do what is righteous in the eyes of Hashem, v'ha'azamta l'mitzvosov, and you will listen to his commandments, v'shamarta kol chukav, and you will observe all of his statutes. It lists three things. There are three things listed here. And again, Rabbi Nachman is going to show us from Gemara, from Talmud, that the three things listed here are connected to the three things we learned about previously. The three things listed in this pasuk are all about correcting the three negative avodas we spoke about earlier. V'hayoshor be'enov taseh, to do what is yashar in the eyes of Hashem, what is righteous in the eyes of Hashem. Zeh hepech bizu yanoshim. That's the opposite of insulting, embarrassing other people. What's the connection? Because the Torah tells us in Eov, in the book of Job, that when a person insults another human being, the pasuk says, Yoshor al anoshim. Let that person go around to all the people, Vayomer, and admit, Chotasi, I sin, Veyoshor he'avesi, and I perverted that which was righteous. And the pasuk there is speaking about a person who insulted other people. And it uses that word yashar, yoshor. That person has to go around to all the people he insulted and beg for forgiveness. The yoshor and the yoshar that are in that pasuk. As the Gemara points out in Yuma, page 87, that what are we talking about? We're talking here about a person who insulted, embarrassed other people. That person is required to go back to that person and say, I'm sorry, I did a terrible thing against you. That's number one. Number two, v'azamto l'mitzvah. You will give ear, you will listen to the commandment, mitzvah. That's the word that's used. Zebechinas tikkun abris. That refers to moral purity. Bebechinas, as it says clearly in the Torah, vayomol Avraham es Yitzchak beno ben shmonas yamim. Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old. Kasher tziva oisay elokim, as Hashem had commanded him. Tziva, mitzvah, it's the same word. We see that circumcision, tikkun abris, is referred to as tziva, mitzvah. That's listening to the mitzvah. Number three, v'shamarta kol chukav, and you will observe all of Hashem's statutes. The word chukah, choik, means specifically the things in the Torah which we can't understand, we cannot rationalize, we simply believe. This week's parsha that we're going to be reading, this week's Torah portion is called Parshas Chukas. It deals with the laws of the red heifer, which is written that this is something that we don't understand. How is it because this heifer is red that's going to heal a person who has impurity? It's something that we cannot rationalize. We believe, we have to apply faith. We believe. So he says, you will observe all the chukim, ze bechinas tikkun emunah. That refers to perfecting your faith. Hefech avodah zarah, which is the opposite of idol worship, pegam emunah, which means lack of faith. Shenemar aleim, about which the Torah says about people who worship idols, chukoi so'amim hevelhu. The statutes of the other nations are nonsense. They're futile. Their idol worship, again, the word chukos is used for idol worship, and chukim are the things in the Torah which we can't understand rationally, we believe. So Rabbi Nachman just showed that the three things mentioned in this pasuk correspond to the three things we learned about before. What does the pasuk say afterwards? That kol hamachla shesam nitzah, all the illnesses that I've given to the Egyptians, you will not experience because I'm your healer. Meaning, ki azai hatfila b'shleimus. If you will correct these three things, your prayer will be 100. And you'll be able to be healed through your prayer, which is Devar Hashem. B'chol hadvarim shabolam. You'll be able to be cured through anything, through bread, through water, through tea, through chocolate, anything. Afilu koidem shenizgala ha'chola sanam. Even before the illness shows up on any tests, or before you feel any symptoms. B'chinas bakoil misrapim. As we learned before, anything will be able to heal you. And there's a footnote here on the side, a little footnote. V'gam kishenoilad v'nitzmach hamachla, meaning even when this illness first is born, it first begins in its earliest stages. Kishe'ein zoichel esrapos mikedem, when you cannot be healed at that time, azai gam kein yuchal lehisrapos aydei b'chinas dvar Hashem. V'gam kishenoilad v'nitzmach hamachla. And even after the illness has been born and it has developed, meaning, let's say a person didn't perfect their prayer and they have been insulting people, and now this illness has developed into a solid cancer, a tumor, whatever it is, a disease, then even then, the person can be healed through this prayer, gam mimachala gemura, even from a real whole sickness. The sickness has developed completely. Bibchinas, as it says in the pasuk, ubeirach eslachmecho, I will bless your bread and water. V'hasiroisi machala mikirbecho, I will remove a sickness, a disease. It's already a sickness. It's not in that early stage. Hainu machala gemura, even a completely developed illness. Because through proper prayer, that person can be healed all the time, in the beginning stage, in the middle stage, in the final stage, through anything, not through a particular medicine, through anything, through bread and water. That's how powerful proper prayer is, as he's teaching us here. When a person works on themselves first, to become a real human being that will not insult other people, that shows real, genuine, wholesome faith in Hashem, and conduct ourselves with real moral behavior.
So if you're praying properly, even though you may still be, you may say some of the things, whatever, that got you to the illness, if you had a proper prayer, you will be good.
He's telling us it's the combination. Proper prayer means over here that you've improved in those three areas also. Otherwise, it's weakening, it's pulling your prayer back. It's preventing your prayer from being fully effective. Hold it over here, continue. I think, Susan, just a moment. Yeah, this is sort of a new piece now. In the next piece, he's going to speak about the fact that one of the Jewish kings, his name was Chizkiyahu HaMelech, King Chizkiyahu. The Torah tells us that he did two things. He gave tremendous support to prayer, and he hid the book of medicines. And Rabbi Nachman is going to show us here again, we're seeing that incredible, important connection between prayer and medicines, that it's this or this. If a person is willing to really try to improve their prayer properly, they don't need the medicines. And if not, they need a whole book of medicines, those large books that the doctors have, that the encyclopedias, where it requires so much research to figure out what's the right medicine and test it, and what are the side effects and what all the different things. Chas v'shalom. Hashem should help us be zeichet to study Hashem's knowledge, the divine knowledge of Hashem, and improve our lives in every way, in our relationships with our fellow man and personal health. We're talking about health.
was taught to search for better days. I was taught there was always good. And when the better days turned into a grace, I did the best that I could. I could take you to the place that you don't know, in the place where you cry but you want more. When you look into the mirror, you won't perfect. Mad at yourself cause you know you feel worthless. Don't feel lonely in a crazy generation. Through your loves of light like no hesitation. Saved from the storm by my daily meditations. And I'm wishing for some better days. Hey, hey. And I'm wishing for some better days. Hey, hey. And I'm wishing for some better days. Hey, hey. Don't get older. Rabbi Nachman once said, here's another one who wants to be perfect, but she won't, she gave up, it's not worth it. That's why you ran around the country with your backpack, searching for yourself, but you got caught in the rat pack. Those were my words 30 years in the future. In the meantime, you're looking for a tutor. Noise get too loud in your head, you just mute her. Stress in your life that you know you gotta lose her. Hey, hey. Don't get older. Rabbi Nachman once said, hey, hey, you can start all over. Yeah. Hey, hey, don't get older. Rabbi Nachman once said, hey, hey, you can start all over. Why do you think they just don't like me? I do not take it so lightly. I wanna be their friend, but they hate and they fight me. Every single time I try to fit, it was tight. See, I'm living with the devil so deep and inside me. I need some help, cause they just call me loco. So I took his head and put it in a chokehold. Never will I give up, even though that was a dream, yo. Oh my god, that was a dream, yo.